Hello, Bianca.
Hi.
Bianca, in your installation, Last Species on Earth, we enter an organic hemisphere, a biotope that preserves the last surviving specimens of plant and animal origin in incubation chambers. It is a complex world with different organisms and creatures. How did you develop the initial idea for your work?
In the development of Last Species on Earth, I became really fascinated with the idea of GMOs,
What
but
is this?
not like the genetically modified organisms, but not like corn or soybeans, as most people know. There's an entire kind of underworld of transgenic animals. So, like genetically modified animals, specifically specifically one. So there's one called EnviroPig, which is this genetically modified animal which was created to emit less phosphorus, which is horrible for the environment if there's too much, but then beneficial if there's just the right amount. So this pig was essentially created to also be good for the environment, but to be like meatier and bigger and tastier.
Mhm.
And just the moral dilemmas with that just got me really thinking of what a world would be like if there were more genetically modified animals. And then with that, I got into the idea of post-natural, which is essentially like a word that houses all of these ideas regarding GMOs. And there's a Center for Post-Natural History in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and it's an entire museum dedicated to GMO animals. So with that, I was thinking of how I could create a project about the transgenic animals and like how humans play an integral role in their demise and also their creation and just nature in general.
So luckily you did not mingle with nature like with the pig, but you had the digital means to exactly do this. And this was also your starting point, right?
Essentially, I wanted to explore the idea of what it would be like if animals evolved in complete dominion and domestication, not naturally, but if they were to like physically evolve almost like into our bodies. So this woman in the first sequence essentially has like the natural world within her womb, but it's a way of signifying how we are complete creators and destroyers of these worlds. And in the speculative universe, we're essentially using creatures for entertainment. If you could go into a zoo and then not just view the animals, but actually become them, like what would that be like?
Maybe you can describe some of the creatures you've been creating and that we encounter in your installation in the show.
They would be the main characters.
Yes.
These two organisms, like they're two sort of bald, cute, cuddly creatures. I wanted to create something purposely lovable and cute for us to relate to. I arrived at the conclusion of these two organisms after reading Donna Haraway's Companion Species, in which she talks about specifically dogs and the whole domestication process of that. And because I have a pug who is, I mean, long history of inbred, like pugs are just have so many health complications,
Mhm.
and it's all because we've just been inbreeding them. And I love my dog, but I can't be oblivious to this. So I essentially had her in mind when I created these two organisms just to depict the domestication and breeding that happens in our daily lives. You know, dogs come from wolves originally, which I just can't even think about when I look at my tiny, funny looking dog. But in a similar way, the creatures I created almost in this world have become like household symbionts to adventure in, and that's what's happening in the film is you become a viewer half the time into what they're perceiving. in order to be a zoo attendee. But also I made two on purpose because I was thinking in the installation, they're kept apart on purpose because of the idea of patented organisms. There are things like Monsanto does this with seeds that have like a terminator gene. So even if you wanted to plant that seed, it would never reproduce for free. So the idea of like patent organisms that can never reproduce for free because we've engineered them to never be able to have the most basic fundamental right. So there's two, and they're kept apart because they can never meet one another and they'll never be able to reproduce. So I essentially created two for that very reason.
You have this feeling because it's really kept in this box. You understand that they cannot be together and that there's something wrong in its behavior and its habitat. It doesn't seem natural at all. And talking about us being zoo visitors, I think that's also an important point, which also makes a difference between watching the video and walking in your installation in the virtual show. It's maybe a strange phrasing, but instead of just watching a video, you installed your work for the first time with 3D models in the exhibition architecture in a landscape, and you had the chance to really tell a slightly different story and to arrange your work differently than as a video in the physical space. Can you tell us more about this process and how the installation came together?
Because it was my first time, I approached it like a disassembling of the entire piece. I wanted to disassemble the entire world that I created and like stripped it down so that viewers could feel like they were entering a zoo or kind of like really meandering at these objects. In hindsight, I wanted them to be animated, but I think it worked out. I think the thing that's really interesting about virtual exhibitions in this way is that you can walk around these otherwise untangible objects. I could make them into sculptures, but I think they would never have the quality that digital possesses. I found it like a really, really interesting experience, and I love seeing them in the virtual exhibition that way.
What I very much love about the virtual space is that you feel the sizes of the things, and your world that you created in the video is so speculative. It's so hard on the screen to guess sizes of objects because they mostly don't exist in the physical. And with your installation in the virtual, you finally can relate to the objects you've been creating with your own presence towards them. And I think that's a very beautiful and intense experience to also discover your beautiful sculptures you created. They are so cool, so funny, so interesting. They did such a special aesthetics you're providing. I think it's just really awesome. I love that so much.
I'm happy that you said funny because that's what I was going for. I think these topics are so unfunny. They're so dark that it's important to see it with a bit of humor. It's important to not laugh about the situation, but maybe that feeling will stay with you, and like the happiness feeling, and you'll want to do something about it.
I think that's really an important point of your work, but maybe also like a general approach of myself to the whole curation of the show, because many works have that. They are funny, you know, like Rainer's creatures are funny, Tamiko's, they are like all installations, many of them are also funny or beautiful, you know, and I think it's important to also use beauty and humor to approach these topics, which are extremely sad and horrible, and also thinking of the future, you know, when you think about that, yeah, we species become extinct, that we live with plastic in our organisms. These are already sad things, and we have to deal with it, and we can't always just deal with it in a serious and sad way. So
yeah,
highly appreciated your approach.
The whole theme, the underlying theme of that exhibition is almost like reworlding. And there's like two paths to take with that. There's seeing the world in a positive view, or the aftermath of what it could be like. And I think it's important to like reworld or to imagine worlds that don't exist in order to see our own.
Exactly. Well, and now that you've been installing your work in the physical and in a virtual space, what are like the biggest advantages or disadvantages, or and what did you learn? How will you proceed showcasing your work?
I think creating video works, installing them physically, and then installing them virtually are three different avenues. I tried to approach the virtual as if it was physical, but I definitely think it's different and there's actually more to play with. So something that I would change or a difficulty that I had was seeing the platform for what it was, which is a virtual platform where anything can possibly happen. And I disassembled things, but I think next time I'm going to go crazier.
Yeah, as you said, one limitation was also the animation that wasn't possible in this framework of this exhibition, you know. What are your upcoming shows and projects, or what ideas you're working on at the moment?
I have an upcoming exhibition taking place at the SAT here in Montreal in August. I also have my first solo show ever coming up in September at Centra Optica, also here, and it's going to be in the 18th edition of Momenta Biennale.
Sounds awesome. Congratulations, Bianca. This is really, really cool.
Thank you.
Well, I wish you much, much success for these wonderful shows. And thank you so much for giving wonderful insights into your work.